Hi, good day everyone. So today we are going to start with an exciting journey into organizational behavior, right? And this is your first chapter into the course. And in this chapter, we are going to understand on why organizational behavior is important, how it is going to affect the organization, how are you going to imply it or apply it in your own experience later once you are done with your diploma, if you are going to go for a job, or else if you are going to further your degree and then later on you are going to enter into the workforce. This is going to be an important chapter, right? And mainly in this organizational behavior, right, as I said before, we are going to learn a lot about mainly teamwork, leadership, workplace culture. So this is the main thing that we will learn, right? But when you speak about organizational behavior, it doesn't only have to be in terms of your job sahaja, right? It doesn't have to be in terms of workplace sahaja, but you can reflect it based on your team also. Okay, for instance, kalau kita buat assignment, how was your experience, or how were you cooperating in the group project or work experience, right? And what are the challenges that you face? Usually you akan ada seorang team member you yang tak nak bekerja, ataupun sometimes you face difficulties in terms of communication, right? So you have a lot of restriction, you will have a lot of different kind of pupils that you are going to see when you work in a certain organization, or when you work in a project, or you work in a team. So there is a lot of things that you need to be focusing on, right? So that is why this organizational behavior ni, dia bukan sahaja kita tengok as a theory sahaja, but this is theory come practical, right? So now you are going to observe a lot of behaviors, a lot of different people, a lot of different possibilities, and then later you are going to reflect it in the real workplace as well, right? So these are the main idea of what organizational behavior is. Okay, so we start with the the first chapter, which is the introduction to organizational behavior. So here we have the Pixar Animation Studio. So I believe that a lot of you know what is Pixar Animation Studio, right? Uh, how many of you have watched movies like, let's say, Toy Story, ke, Finding Nemo, or Inside Out? Sorry, right? So all these are the movies that is produced by Pixar, right? So when you speak about Pixar Studio, okay, Pixar is not just successful in terms of its technology sahaja, bukan because they are able to create the best version of animation a film, but it is also because of their key practice in terms of organizational behavior, right? So you can see here, organizational behavior practice have helped Pixar Animation Studio to become the world's most successful animation studio, right? So why we say that is that sebab Pixar ni dia adalah, it's a try for its people, right? Because they are very concerned about their team, about their people, about their employees, and they are very concentrated on that particular aspect. So you can see here that the key concentration yang organization the key concentration in terms of organizational behavior that Pixar implies is the employee competencies, right? So employee competencies ni adalah based on how well they can perform, right? So Pixar only hires in terms of their employees ni, or the people ni adalah usually they are who are creative, highly skilled employees, right? They akan hire people as such sahaja, right? And they are very pupil centered culture, which means that dia adalah satu company yang sangat value their employees, right? And they ensure that they keep their employees engaged towards their company, towards their corporation, as well as they really value the way that each people are different, right? And in terms of teamwork and organizational learning, they ensure that all their artists, all their animators and writers, they are going to collaborate with each other, right? dia takkan emphasize kepada self-directed work sahaja, but they always rely on teamwork and organizational learning to ensure that each of the different department, each of the different kind of people, they are able to work together to provide the best version of their final output, right? And we have constructive conflict. Constructive conflict ni is that whenever there is any issues, or whenever there are certain certain um, issues that have been raised, right? They always ensure that it is it is the disagreements are ensured to be smooth, and they are always focused on how to resolve the disagreements in a respectful way, right? So dekat sini kita boleh tengok that when you speak about organizational behavior, you need to ensure that it is mainly focused on leadership, right? You need to know how are you going to direct your company, how are you going to work in a team, how are you going to direct your team, right? All this is a very important aspect, sebab you tak nak jadi orang at the first level sahaja. You wanted to keep growing, right? So let's say you start from a junior position, in few years time you wanted to go till the managerial position, executive position, right? So you wanted to ensure that you are going to continuously grow. So bila you nak grow, you kena ada certain ciri-ciri ataupun certain key characteristics that will help you to um, grow in an ideal way, right? And to make sure that you are able to work with a lot of different kind of people, right? So this is the main thing. Sama juga macam let's say kita kerja dalam assignments, kan? So when you do a work in terms of when you do an assignment in group and when you do it individually, you akan rasa ada banyak differences, right? Because when you do it in a group, if you have a group yang memang betul-betul bagus, yang memang betul-betul cooperative, you will see that your work is far more better and you will enjoy the learning experience, right? Bila you ada satu group yang sangat bagus ataupun bila you ada team members that are highly cooperative, right? Compared to when you are doing assignments alone. So this is how we we actually associate to the organizational behavior, right? So in this slide, you can see that this is the definition of what is organizational behavior and what is organization, right? So you kena pastikan that you understand both the definition. Sometimes we ask you in your final exam as well, right? So you kena tahu apa itu organizational behavior and apa itu organization, so that we are able to differentiate between one another, right? So organizational behavior, it is about the study of what people think, what people feel, and what people do in and around organization, right? So kita nak tahu macam mana cara mereka berfikir. Adakah mereka yang suka curi tulang ataupun adakah mereka yang suka membantu? Or how do they feel? Do they feel violated, or do they feel appreciated? Apa perasaan mereka setiap hari bila dia datang kerja? And what do they actually do in terms of their workplace? So this is what mainly organizational behavior is. And when we speak about organization, right? Organization is a group of people who work interdependently towards some purpose, right? So organization ni dia adalah sebuah syarikat. So dalam syarikat ni kita akan ada kumpulan of a group of people that are going to work, right? Dia tak kerja secara seorang sahaja. Dia akan kerja bersama-sama with a lot of different people, and dia akan strive to achieve the company's purpose. Dia akan kerja untuk achieve the main mission or main vision or main objective of the company, right? So this is how you are going to explain between organizational behavior and organization, right? So when you speak about this, you can also imagine, let's say kita cakap pasal a football team, kan? Ataupun let's say kita bercakap pasal a hospital or a university. Setiap organisation ni dia akan ada their own mission, right? Or their own common goal on what they are supposed to achieve. So setiap syarikat yang ditubuhkan tu dia akan ada the goals that they wanted to achieve, right? Kenapa kita perlu create this organization? So that is how you relate the common practice of organizational behavior and with the concept of organization. So here you can see the foundations of organizational behavior, macam mana ditubuhkan, right? Macam mana organizational behavior ni ditubuhkan. So you can see that organizational behavior ni dia might seem like a modern field, right? But people have been discussing management and human behavior for over 2000 years. And you can see that this field was established in the 1940s. So sometimes kita tengok organizational behavior ni, kita tengok macam benda ni baru, tapi it is not something that is new, right? This is something that have been in the context for a very long time, right? And you can see here that we have a lot of key people or key scholars, right? We have Max Weber, we have Frederick Winslow Tyler, Elton Mayo, Cheston Barnett, and Mary Parker Follett, right? So these are the key people. For instance, kalau kita tengok macam Max Weber ni kan, dia adalah orang yang introduce bureaucracy and a structured organisation. Right, kalau kita tengok kepada Frederick Taylor ni adalah sangat terkenal sebab you will also see him, see Frederick Taylor ni dalam operation management juga. Sebab Frederick Taylor, the emphasis is more towards the scientific management and also in terms of efficiency. Sebab tu dia sangat terkenal when we speak about organizational behavior as well as in terms of operation management, right? And then we have Elton Mayo. This person is someone who studied in terms of social interactions, right, as well as productivity. So ini adalah tiga orang yang paling terkenal when we speak about organizational behavior. So now you might think on why do we need to learn organizational behavior? Kenapa kita nak tahu pasal organizational behavior ni? Sebab manusia ni sangat-sangat berbeza, right? Every one of us are very different. And when we speak about organisation, kita dah kata tadi yang kita nak bekerja sama-sama, right? We wanted to work together. So means that you need to overcome all the differences and you need to ensure how are you going to handle each and every one of the key people in the organisation, right? So we have certain aspect on why do we need to study OB. The first one is to satisfy the need to understand and predict, right? You need to be able to understand your employees, you need to be able to understand your team members as well as predict their behavior. For instance, kalau you dah tahu dalam team you ada certain team members ni yang memang betul-betul malas, that means that you can already predict what they are going to do, right? They are not going to submit on time, they are not going to take things seriously, they are going to be relying fully on the AI. So these are the behavior that you can predict, right? And it helps us to test personal theories. It allows you to understand the factors in terms of leadership and also teamwork. And the third one, it helps influence behavior to get things done. And it improves an organization's financial performance, right? Financial health. So bila kita bercakap pasal OB, once you have noticed or once you have analysed that how each people are behaving, then you can see that you can make a lot of amendments, right? You boleh datang dengan banyak strategi-strategi yang terkini so that eventually it will help the financial health. And because organizational behavior ni, it applies to everyone. It is not something yang okay, only these people can do or only these people is related. Dia bukan macam tu. It is for everyone, right? It is for the student, it is for the employee, it is for the future manager, it is for the housewife, it is for everyone. Dia tak kira kita ni siapa, but it is something that is implicated for everyone, right? So based on that, here you can see that we have the old perspectives of organizational effectiveness as well as we have the modern perspective, right? So kita selalunya akan ada the traditional and the modern perspective of organizational effectiveness, right? So if you notice, in the past, usually companies thought they were effective just meeting their goals, right? So dia akan selalunya rasa that, okay, let's say I nak capai 1,000, order above 1,000. So once dah capai, companies always think that, okay, I'm doing well. But the question is that, is it really enough? Is it really what is important, right? So that is why you need to notice the idea of organizational effectiveness ni, dia bukan sahaja in terms of you achieving the financial outcome, which means bukan sahaja you nak buat revenue, you nak buat profit, bukan itu sahaja. It has more than that, right? So that is why when we speak about goal oriented, effective firms achieve their stated objective, right? So once kita let's say, right, because usually when companies are set, objective dia adalah untuk serve the customer ataupun untuk achieve the target, right? These are the common goals that companies have. So usually in the old days, what happens is that companies are more goal oriented. So dia nak ensure untuk dia capai objektif sahaja, right? But at this moment, it is no longer accepted, right? It is no longer an indicator for organizational effectiveness, because bila kita nak kata we wanted to make it goal oriented, it is something that is easy to set goals, and some goals are too abstract to evaluate, and company might achieve the wrong goals. So this is why we are um, no longer suggesting to only focus kepada goal sahaja. Kita tak nak untuk tengok as it is just a checklist sahaja, right? But we wanted to have more of the effectiveness in terms of how the organization is going to be conducted, and how is it going to be related to the satisfaction of the employees, right? So here you can see an example. We have Home Depot, right? So Home Depot ni dia adalah the world's largest retailer of home improvement products, right? It has a lot of furniture, it has a lot of um, it has a lot of accessories, right? So they are the home improvement products, and dia sangat famous mainly in the US, right? So you can see that if, let's say, we speak about Home Depot, right? If they only focuses on sales and profit, they are not able to see if their employees are unhappy, or we could not actually evaluate if the company is truly successful. Sebab the main idea of organizational behavior is that if you are stating that a certain company is good, it's supposed to be a all-rounder, right? Dia tak boleh based on profit sahaja, but it needs to be in terms of the satisfaction, not only from the customer but from the side of the employee, right? So based on that, financial success ni adalah bukan satu best measure for a company's effectiveness, right? Sebab you set goals, you capai target, you dapat duit banyak, tapi your team are not happy, your team are not satisfied, then you tak boleh sustain for a very long time. Eventually company you akan jatuh. So that is why the modern organization concept, they focus on multiple factors, right? They are going to focus on all perspective to ensure that each of it is able to contribute to the effectiveness of the company, as well as to ensure a long-term sustainability of the company, right? So here you can see we have four perspective of organizational effectiveness, right? Dia ada 4 perkara, and you need to know each and every one of it. Okay, so we will look into the idea of each of it. Okay, dekat sini kita boleh tengok certain wordings tu dah lari sebenarnya, right? So we have 4 perspective. The first one is open system perspective, right? Open system perspective, it means that you are going to adapt to the external changes, right? You nak adapt kepada changes. And the second one is organizational learning perspective. Learning perspective, you need to know that it is about acquiring and using knowledge, right? Kita acquire knowledge, kita akan gunakan knowledge tersebut. The third one is high performance work practice. focusing on employee development, right? Focusing on employee development. And the last one is stakeholder perspective. So stakeholder perspective adalah untuk consider the needs of employees, customer as well as the society. So here I have given you an example. Apple is a company that is well known, Apple Inc. Corporation, right? So Apple is successful because it adapts to the customer needs, and they are always hiring people, the best people, and build strong team and maintain a strong reputation. And itu adalah sebab kenapa Apple boleh jadi satu company yang terlalu famous, as well as it is a company that um, is growing continuously, right? Because of the idea of meeting the customer demand. So you will see that there is a lot of companies that have not been in the picture for quite some time, right? Company yang dulunya sangat famous tetapi sekarang dia tak ada lagi, right? So that is why when you are starting a company or when you are working in a company, you need to ensure that you are going to continuously change based on what is required at the moment, right? You cannot keep on you cannot be static ataupun you tak boleh refuse to change. You need to ensure that you are going to continuously learn, you are going to continuously change, you are going to continuously perform, right? So here we have a full explanation of what each of the perspective are, right? The first one is open system perspective. As I said, open system perspective ni dia adalah untuk adapt the external changes, right? So organizations are a complex system that live within and depend upon the external environment, right? And organizations are like a, kita boleh katakan dia adalah macam living organism, right? So usually dalam open system perspective ni dia akan tengok organisation sebagai satu living organism, which means that they interact with the environment, right? They are not only focuses in terms of the internal of the company, tetapi dia akan tengok kepada external environment juga, right? And it, as an effective organization, you need to ensure that you maintain a close fit with the changing condition, right? And you need to transform inputs to output efficiently and flexibly. That is why I kata, kalau kita belajar organizational behavior, right? Once you dah go through this subject, you need to know that dalam diri you kena ada spirit and kena ada the idea that you must be willing to accept changes. Sebab dalam dunia ni atau dalam hidup ni, changes is the one thing that will continuously happen, right? Changes is the only thing that is not that is going to be apa yang macam mana kita nak kata, it is the one that is going to ensure that you are going to move forward. Sebab kalau tak ada change, maksudnya you akan static sahaja, you takkan grow, you takkan learn, you takkan dapat input yang baru. It is always going to be the same thing sahaja, right? So let's say if we take an example, right? Think of a restaurant. Restoran ni dia dapat raw materials in terms of the apa bahan-bahan mentah untuk masak kan, right? They prepare the meals and they serve their customer. So the main idea is that you have the raw materials, you have the input, right? And then you process and then you get the output. But if customer preference changes, the restaurant must also be able to adapt. Kan? Kalau let's say kita ni memang dah ada, okay, untuk memasak benda ni, untuk memasak ayam goreng, these are the list of requirements that we have, the list of materials that we need. But let's say kalau customers preference dah tukar, right? Customers interest have changed, then the company must also be able to change, right? That is how you are able to ensure that you can satisfy the customers continuously, right? Sebab tu kita kata kalau open system perspective, there is three main thing, which means that you are not going to look into internal only. The second one, you need to look into the external environment, and the third one, you must not be hesitant to change, right? This is open system perspective. So dekat sini kita boleh tengok we have the input, we have the the process, right? And then we have the output. Okay, and then we have an example dekat sini, right? Successful business like Nordstrom constantly adjusts to ensure external feedback, to uh, to communicate with the external feedback, right? So Nordstrom department store dekat Washington, they own a subsystem of departments, teams and work process. So ini adalah satu company ataupun satu brand for department store, right? They have all kind of items here. And you can see they are very very successful sebab dia akan always dapatkan feedback daripada customer, and once dia dapat feedback dia akan always make continuous changes. So that is why hingga sekarang dia adalah satu company yang memang continuously strive to meet with the customers need. So whatever suggestions that is given by the customers, they take it seriously and they are always ready to make changes, right? So that is the first one, open system perspective. Right? Untuk summarize, open system perspective, you need to know that you must be able to continuously learn and you must be able to make changes whenever it is required. Okay. Now, the second one is a open system. The second one is the organizational learning perspective. Right? So, dalam organizational learning perspective ni, satu sahaja yang you kena tahu, which is that organizations must continuously learn to stay competitive. Okay? Maksudnya, dalam organization ni, like you always see that when it comes to organization, dia akan selalu hantar workforce dia ataupun pekerja-pekerja dia untuk pergi ke training. Right? So, training is a part of organizational learning perspective. Right, the organization's capacity to acquire, share, use and store valuable knowledge. Right, so this is why kita akan always ensure that dalam hidup ni kita tak boleh static. Kita tak boleh kata ilmu tu tak penting. Education is not important. You cannot say that because your life revolves around learning. So you need to ensure that each and every day you learn something new. Tak kisah umur you berapa, tetapi you kena ensure that you are going to continuously learn. Right? So, you need to consider both stock and flow of knowledge. Kalau stock knowledge, dia adalah intellectual capital. Right? Intellectual capital that is stored in the employees and also in the company system. Okay, stock of knowledge ni adalah benda yang memang dah sedia ada. It is something that is there in the company. Right, in terms of the system ataupun in terms of the existing staffs in the company. And the flow of knowledge is the process of you acquiring and also share the knowledge. And the stock untuk intellectual capital, dia ada 3 jenis. Right, for the intellectual capital, as I said, this is something that have been stored in the employees and the computer system, in the company system. Right. So we have human capital, knowledge that people possess and generate employees. Structural capital, knowledge captured in systems and structured. Right? And we have the relationship capital, value derived from satisfied customers, reliable suppliers, etc. Okay, so stock knowledge ni dia adalah something yang memang sedia ada dalam company tu. So once you are done with the input, you go into the process, you transform it into an output, means that you know there is a flow of learning. So you will always get a lot of feedbacks, you always have a lot of communications, you always are going to go through the system, so you akan dapat banyak information or a learning curve dekat situ. Right? And flow of organizational learning process, right? The flow of knowledge pula adalah dari segi knowledge acquisition, knowledge sharing and also knowledge use. Right? So kalau knowledge acquisition maksudnya you akan acquire the knowledge. You extract informations and ideas from its environment as well as through insight. Kalau knowledge sharing, dia adalah distributing the knowledge throughout the organization. And then we have knowledge use, which is applying knowledge to organizational processes in ways that improve the organization's effectiveness. Right? So kalau knowledge acquisition, you can see it is hiring skilled staff, Knowledge sharing is posting case studies on intranet, and knowledge use is giving staff freedom to try out ideas. Right? So this is the overall process untuk flow of knowledge. And then we have also organizational memory. So this is also the part of organizational learning perspective, right? So you can see organizational memory ni dia adalah the storage and preservation of intellectual capital, right? You can retain, you can ensure that dia kita boleh simpan the intellectual capital ni by keeping knowledgeable employees, transfer knowledge to other training, transfer human capital to structural capital, ataupun kita panggil dia sebagai job rotation, right? So bila kita dah ada intellectual capital, means that if let's say you have your employees yang sangat bagus, dia memang sangat knowledgeable, dia memang dah go through training, dia memang dah tahu um, setiap satu aspect of the work, right? That means that you need to know that you are supposed to keep the employees. You jangan sesekali ignore the employees sebab there are going to be a lot of different companies that are more willing to take the employees in, right? So that is why retaining your employees is very important. And you need to ensure bila you dah retain employee ni, you tak boleh rely on that particular employee sahaja. You need to ensure that the knowledge is being transferred, right? That is why kalau kita tengok company yang besar ni, dia akan ada sharing session, right, with between the employees. So which means that orang yang dah lama ataupun orang yang dah ada ciri-ciri ataupun ada experience on how to do works, they will teach the other members, right? So dia akan ada satu session where they are able to provide the knowledge, they are able to share the informations that they know, and they will ensure to have they will ensure to guide the team members, right? So this is the organizational memory. So untuk organizational learning perspective, we have a example, right? We have an example. We have Duha groups here. So you can search on the performance of Duha group sebenarnya. Duha group ni dia sangat exciting for you to see on how they connect in terms of the organization with the overall world sebenarnya, right? So they apply organizational through different kind of models. The first one, they have the Kaizen Blitz, right? Teams identify more effective way to operate entire work area. They also have off-site training, healthy and safety officer training at nearby college. They have lunch and learn session. Employee teach co-workers while enjoying a hot company supplied meal. Right? Yang ni macam I kata. So once you have a knowledgeable worker, once you have a top performer in your organization, you need to ensure that the experience ataupun the expertise tu ditransferkan kepada the co-workers so that you can have a better work organization and something that has a better chemistry in terms of their employees, right? And then they have their daily huddles held every day for 5-minute suggestions improvement, right? So here you can see that dalam Duha group ni, they use daily team huddles, training and knowledge sharing knowledge sharing events to ensure that they are able to provide a sharing session between their employees as well to stay competitive, right? So with that, we look into the next performance or the next perspective, which is the high performance work practice. Okay, high performance work practice are internal systems and structures that are associated with successful companies, which means that the best companies, they don't just hire employees, but they create environment where employees perform at their best, right? For example, employees involvement and autonomy, continuous skill development, and also performance based reward, right? So in this situation, in high performance work practice, right, the employees are always has the employees always have a competitive advantage, right? And the values of employees increase through specific practices, and maximum benefit when organization practices are bundled, right? E-learning, blended learning, time calculation system, ICs. So these are the systems or structures that are able to provide a better work environment for their employees, right? So you can see here that the high performance work practices, it has no consensus, but high performance work practices includes the three main thing, like I said just now, right? The employee involvement and autonomy, which means that it is the combination of self-directed team, right? For instance, you are allowed to have your own team, as well as you are given the autonomy. Given the autonomy maksudnya you can decide what is best for your team, ataupun you can decide what is best for the workflow. So you have the kita kata you have the kuasa lah, right? The autonomy means that you have the kuasa untuk the power for you to decide on what you want to do or what you wanted to achieve, right? And then for employee competence, right, the continuous skill development in terms of they always provide you with training, they always provide you with the um, fundings, ataupun they always ensure that you have what it takes to continuously grow, right? And the main one is the performance based rewards, right? So maksudnya bila you perform well, you get the rewards that is equal to the performance that you have made, right? So here we can see an example. Kita ada American Express dekat sini. I think most of you already know what is American Express, right? It is a American Express ni dia adalah macam bank. It is a company, right? Because you can see there is a lot of credit cards that is based on American Express, ataupun kita panggil dia sebagai Amex, right? So American Express dekat sini you can see they always encourage their employees to go off script, right? Go off script to solve customer problems and creating better service experience. So what it means is that kalau let's say macam call center kan, the customer service representative ni adalah pekerja yang dekat call center, right? So when you work in a call center, you usually will have a script. You akan ada a script that you need to follow. So in call center, the common practice for many years is that you kena ikut pada skrip sahaja. You tak boleh pergi luar daripada skrip tu, right? But what happens in American Express is that they found that the script are quite boring, right? You call and then you tanya, minat dengan credit card tak, right? Ataupun selamat pagi cik minat dengan credit card. That is the common practice that usually other banks have, right? Or other financial service provider has. But what American Express saw is that this is not giving them the revenue that they wanted, and it is not attracting the customers. Customers feel annoyed, dia akan always hang the phone, ataupun dia akan always marah. So it made them to realize that their staff should have the autonomy, which means that setiap staff akan ada cara yang dia bercakap yang berlainan, right? So when it is different, they should be able to have the autonomy to customize their conversation rather rely on memorized statement. So instead of having a standard statement from one person to another person, they wanted to ensure that they are able to customize the conversation. So that is why kalau kita ada dekat US kan, kalau let's say you have any calls from the customer service and all this, you will notice that they would be very different from the one that is in Malaysia. So kalau you pernah go through customer service dekat Malaysia, you will see that it is still the memorized statements, right? Poin-poin ada 5 minit tak kita nak bercakap pasal loan? Berapa minit ke? That is the common practice that we have in Malaysia. But when you go to US, it will not be like that. They will be like, hi, how are you doing? How was your day today? Are you well? So we heard that this. Dia akan ada a lot of communication that is connected, right? So bila kita ada communication yang lebih connected with the customer, then it will be much more easier for you to make the sales, right? So the employees solve the problems on the spot. So the way that American Express conduct their work is that what we call as high performance work practices. When you allow for autonomy, dia akan jadi lebih casual, dia akan jadi lebih tersusun compared to a memorized statement. Right? So now we go to the final perspective, which is the stakeholder perspective. Okay, stakeholder perspective ni adalah daripada, you already know that when we speak about stakeholder, dia adalah semua orang yang involved, right? From the internal to the external part of the organization. Anyone that is going to get affected, anyone that is involved in the overall transaction, right? So it can be your staff, it can be your customer, it can be your supplier, and it can be the community as a whole, right? So stakeholders are any entity who affects or is affected by the firm's objective and action, personalizes the open system perspective, challenges with the stakeholder perspective, and stakeholders have conflicting interests, and firms have limited resources, right? So dalam stakeholder perspective ni, dia adalah opposite kepada the open system perspective, ataupun dia adalah the personalized version of open system perspective. Sebab dekat sini, right, dekat sini kita akan ensure that the stakeholder perspective is given the higher priority. Right, sama juga dekat open system perspective tadi, kita tengok that they interact with the environment, right? So here it is the same concept where we are going to ensure that the environment, the people are also protected, right? So here you can see that, okay, we have an example here, right? Kita ada Lockheed Martin. It is rated by engineering students as an ideal employer, right? So Lockheed Martin ni dia adalah satu organisation, satu dia bukan organisation, kita kata dia sebagai an association, right? Which is rated as an ideal employer. It is because that they pay attention to its many stakeholders, they rely on values and ethics to guide decision, and they have a strong emphasis on corporate social responsibility, right? So you can see that they are cleaning after the hurricane, right? So dekat sini kita boleh tengok that when you speak about the stakeholder perspective, maksudnya this is where you need to have a strong emphasis on taking care of the community and also on the environment. So dalam stakeholder perspective ni, kita akan selalu emphasize kepada satu benda yang paling utama, which is corporate social responsibility, right? So corporate social responsibility we have already seen on in business ethics and law, right? On how important corporate social responsibility is, and kenapa kita kena ensure that setiap company is involved with that, right? So not only for you to increase your reputation, to ensure that you communicate to the customers, the potential customers, that you are a good company, but also to show that this is the ideal company that you should be associated with, right? So you need to ensure dalam stakeholder perspective ni, kita kena pastikan that all the stakeholders are given the chance to express their opinion. And daripada opinion tu, you akan dapatkan satu strategi ataupun the decisions that is relied on the values and ethics that you have. So stakeholder perspective ni adalah lebih kepada etika, right? It is more towards the ethics. So the stakeholder values and ethics, this is something that we have already seen, right? We have already discussed about this in the ethics and law subject, right? So these are the values and ethics that prioritize stakeholders' interests, right? Values means that it is in terms of a stable evaluative belief, guide preference for outcome or course of action in various situations, right? And we have ethics. Ethics ni adalah moral principles that determine whether an action is right or wrong and the outcomes are good or bad, right? So values ni dia adalah lebih kepada belief system, and ethics ni dia adalah lebih kepada moral principles, right? So here you can also observe that when it comes to the stakeholders and stakeholder perspective and CSR, we are not only emphasizing that organization um, need to make money only, but they also should be able to serve the employees, customers, as well as the society. So organization, they should not think that their main existence is because to make money sahaja, right? They need to know that they have the responsibility towards the employees, customers, and also the society. So that is why we will see that there is something called as triple bottom line, right? Triple bottom line maksudnya we are focusing on the economy, the society, as well as the environment. Maksudnya pada mulanya kita memang nak buat kita memang nak dapatkan duit, right? If you remember, we have seen this in ethics as well, right? The first part of it is that we need to make money, right? Kita kena jaga kepada ekonomi, kita kena ensure we are going to make money, right? Because kalau tak buat duit, then you tak boleh bayar pekerja you ataupun you tak boleh care for the welfare of your employees, right? So we need to ensure that we are going to make money. So once we make money, then you need to have the legal legal observance, which means that you need to ensure all the legal perspective are also given the emphasis or the priority. So once you focus on that, then comes the society. You can ensure that the society is not going to be harmed in any of your work process or in any of your workflow. You need to ensure that your society is given the priority as well as the environment. So sebab tu kita selalu akan tengok that when it comes to the environment, right, you will see that there is a lot of apa kita kata, a lot of emphasis on ethical products, right? Kita tak nak guna plastik, kita nak pergi kepada green manufacturing, right? So there is a lot of practice in terms of ethical way of bringing products ataupun newer products, right? So that we do not harm the society or the environment. And based on that, we have the globalization, right? So dalam globalization is that we know that we wanted to make our company not only in local but also to expand it to the global workforce, right? So bila kita nak start company ni, kita kena ada the intention untuk besarkan company kita, right? So when it comes to globalization, right, economic, social and cultural connectivity with people in other parts of the world ataupun kita kata sebagai diversification, right? We need to have the workforce diversity, right? So bila kita dah globalizekan company, you see that a lot of Malaysian based company dia akan ada dekat luar negara juga, right? So bila you expand ke luar negara, maksudnya you are going to have a lot of different employees, you are going to have a lot of different kind of people daripada different part of the world yang akan join your workforce. So you need to ensure that you are going to pay attention to the cultural emphasis as well as to the social and economic emphasis, right? So the effects of globalization on organization is that bila kita ada globalization, then the companies will be adapting to different cultures and market, right? So there will be new structures, there will be increasing diversity, increasing competing pressures and also intensification, right? So maksudnya dekat sini, bila kita dah expand company kita, then it means that a lot of new exposure is going to come in, right? Kita akan learn a lot of new things, kita akan tengok a lot of new things, and we need to be able to adapt accordingly, right? So with that, on the final context, increasing workforce diversity, we have the surface level diversity, we have the deep level diversity, and also we have the implication. Kalau surface level diversity adalah based on something that is observable, right? Something yang kita boleh tengok. Okay, the observable demographic and other overt differences in people, which means that you can see their race, their ethnicity, their gender and also age, right? This is something yang memang you boleh tengok. And then we have the deep level diversity, which is difference in terms of the psychological characteristics. For instance, their personalities, belief, value, and also their attitude. Right? And the example is that the differences in terms of age cohorts. For instance, dari Gen Z ke Gen Y, perbezaan dia yang sangat ketara. Right? And the implication is that you need to be leveraging the diversity advantage. Right? Setiap satu ni dia ada the pros and cons dia. Right? So you need to know bila kita nak diversify ni dia ada banyak-banyak um, advantages ataupun the pros that you need to make sure you are able to utilize. Right? And you need to also know on the diversity challenges. Kita kena tahu yang mana yang sangat sensitif, yang mana yang you tak boleh buat, yang mana yang you boleh buat. Right? You need to be respectful of one another. And you need to have the ethical imperative of diversity. Right? You need to have the ethical perspective on how you look into the ethics. How do you look into the diversity? So that is the last slide for this chapter, right? Now in this chapter, it is more towards the introduction. It is more towards the overview on how organizational behavior is related, right? And you need to be able to understand what is organizational behavior, how is it important or why is it important, how do we measure the company's success, and what are the four perspectives of effectiveness. Itu adalah yang paling penting. So with that information, that will be it for this chapter, right? I have provided you the tutorial in the spectrum as well as in UMSAF. So make sure to go through it and then make the submissions accordingly. All right. Thank you so much.